අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT Mobitel දේශයේ ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Monday, the 24th of July 2023. Fitch hitched. The government's debt restructuring plan is likely to reduce investment and liquidity risks for domestic insurers, says the Fitch ratings agency. Strike struck. Train drivers' strike halts 35 train commutes. Minister vows to initiate strict actions against protesters following cabinet approval. No way, Norway. Norwegian embassy in Colombo to be closed permanently from July 31st onwards. Quintessential cuisine. Sri Lanka to focus on culinary tourism with the support of the private sector, the travel and the hotel industry.
Together with the private sector, the travel industry, the hotel industry, government is prepared to start a culinary...
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අත්තිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to you from AdaDerana's English News First at 9. I'm Jonathan Benedict and let's take a look at your top story for this evening. Fitch Ratings says that the government's debt restructuring plan is likely to reduce investment and liquidity risks for domestic insurers, as the proposed plan will not have a direct impact on the local currency government debt holdings of insurers, banks and non-banking financial institutions. This is largely because of the negative perception given off by Sri Lankan insurers who do not have much exposure to international sovereign bonds. Fitch confirms the rating for Sri Lankan insurers are being viewed negatively due to various risks, including high investments, liquidity issues, weak financial outlook, and regulatory capital problems that could affect the insurer's credit position compared to other entities in the country. Insurers in Sri Lanka have invested in Sri Lankan development bonds which are in foreign currency but governed by local laws, which will be affected under the domestic debt restructuring. However, the restructuring of foreign debts such as international sovereign bonds is still being worked out. Only a few insurers have exposure to international sovereign bonds, which is a small portion of their total assets. Fitch added that the government has presented options for dealing with Sri Lankan development bonds, with the impact on insurers' capital dependent on the option that will be selected by the insurers. The rating agency said it's expected that the insurers' maintained capital reserves will help mitigate any losses, even though the lack of foreign currency in the local banking system makes it challenging for insurers due to having foreign currency deposits in local banks to support these obligations. The risks faced by Sri Lankan insurers are linked to the government, banks and non-bank financial institutions. They mainly invest in government-issued securities, corporate debt and deposits with local banks and financial institutions. Fitch said that the debt restructuring proposal doesn't include the holdings of Sri Lankan rupee-denominated treasury securities by banks, which will ease the pressure on the banks' credit profiles. The Sri Lankan Railway Department said that more than 35 train commutes were cancelled by midday today due to the protests carried out by the Train Drivers Association since the strike began last night. The protesters were called off during the course of the day at around 4:30 p.m. following discussions with the authorities. However, Minister of Railways Bandula Gunawardena said that the matter will be discussed in the cabinet meeting today, with strict action to be initiated against the protesters who caused inconvenience to the general public.
The protest, initiated by Sri Lanka Train Drivers Association for adding 6 more train commutes despite a prevailing labour shortage, was called off today evening following discussions with railway authorities. The train drivers of the electric power stations engaged in a protest against the government's decision to add 6 more commutes by reporting in sick, resulting in the cancellation of about 21 train commutes yesterday. According to NJ Indipolage, Deputy General Manager of Traffic at the Department of Railways, stated that as a result of the traffic, about 35 train commutes had been cancelled by 12 noon today. The Department of Railways mentioned that since 2 new trains run in between Colombo and Jaffna are scheduled to run from the 1st of August, 6 train commutes which were previously running under another station had to be diverted to the electric power station.
දුම්රිය දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවට සුද්ධ සිංහලෙන් කියලා තියෙනවා මේ ගේ ජනතාව අපහසුවට පත් කරන්නේ නැතුව මොනවා හරි ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒ ප්‍රශ්නය පළවෙනියෙන් GMRට සාමාන්‍ය අධිකාරීවරයාට කියලා සාකච්ඡා කරලා විසඳන්න. එහෙම විසඳෙන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒ ප්‍රශ්නේ අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ලේකම්වරයාට යොමු කරලා ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳනවාද බලන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් මට කියන්න මම විශේෂ ඇමතිවරයා වශයෙන් හැමදාම මැදිහත් වෙලා කැබිනට් පේපර් දමමින් මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳනවා. දැන් එහෙම නැතුව මගින් කොළඹට අරන් ඇවිල්ලා එකපාරට දුම්රිය නතර කරනවා නම් ඉස්සෙල්ලා දවසේ කියලා හෙට වැඩට යන්න ඉන්න දහස් ගණන් මිනිස්සු අතරමං කරනවා නම් මේකට ඉතා දැඩි තීන්දුවකට එන්න ඕනේ. මෙච්චර කල් මේක කරන් ආවා මේ විදියට කියලා. උගේ කාලේ එයයි ඊටම සහයෝගයෙන් කවදක්වත් වර්ධනයක් කළේ නැහැ. රියදුරවරුගේ යම් කිසි දේශපාලන උවමනාවක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. මම අද කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට කියන්න බලනවා මේ රටේ මගී ජනතාවගේ ඉල්ලීම තිබුණේ දුම්රිය එක කවදක්වත් කරන්න බෑ පුද්ගලීකරණය කරන්න කියලා. මම කිව්වා නෑ පුද්ගලීකරණය කරන්න නැතුව මේක අධිකාරියක් කරලා හදන්න පුළුවන් අපිට කාලයක් දෙන්න කියලා. ඒ දීලා තියෙද්දි මේ විදියටම මිනිසුන්ව පෙළනවා නම් ලංකාන්දුවේ දුම්රිය සේවය ඊටම දැඩි තීන්දුවකට මම කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට කියලා ගන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe expressed confidence that upon the successful completion of Sri Lanka's domestic debt restructuring, several halted development projects would resume promptly, thereby further bolstering the nation's economic development. The president made these comments recently during a meeting with Yuan Jian, a member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. During the meeting, the Chinese delegation also expressed optimism and confidence in Sri Lanka's future economic growth trajectory. Member of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party and Secretary of the Shanqing Cities Council in China, Yuan Xianjun, paid a courtesy call to President Ranil Wickremesinghe on Saturday at the Presidential Secretariat. During the meeting, President Wickremesinghe presented Sri Lanka's ambitious development plans with a primary focus on enhancing connectivity with the rest of Asia. Issuing a statement, the President's media division said that the head of state emphasized the importance of regional cooperation, outlining how these plans would foster economic growth and facilitate increased trade and investment opportunities. President Wickremesinghe also expressed his confidence that upon the successful completion of the restructure, several halted development projects would resume promptly, further bolstering the nation's economic development. The Chinese delegation meanwhile appreciated the president's steadfast efforts to stabilize Sri Lanka's economy amid challenging circumstances. They expressed optimism and confidence in the country's future economic growth trajectory. The Norwegian embassy confirmed today that it will close its office in Colombo from the 31st of July, as the operations are slated to be moved to the Norwegian embassy in New Delhi. In a Facebook post, the office in Colombo confirmed that the Norwegian embassy in New Delhi will now be the mission responsible for Norway in India, Bhutan, Sri Lanka and the Maldives, headed by the Norwegian ambassador to India. In a statement issued by the embassy on September 9th last year, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that in 2023, the number of diplomatic staff will be increased at the Norwegian embassies in Bucharest, Kiev and Vilnius, as well as the mission of Norway to the EU and Norway's permanent delegation to NATO in Brussels. Additional staff will also be posted to select missions outside Europe in 2023. The number of locally employed staff at selected missions both in and outside Europe will also be increased. Accordingly, the ministry also further said that the embassies in Bratislava, Slovakia, Colombo, Sri Lanka, Pristina, Kosovo, and the embassy office in Antananarivo, Madagascar, and the consulate general in Houston, USA, will be closed in 2023. In local news, 3 youths were reported missing and are feared to have drowned while bathing in the Sea of Negombo last afternoon. The missing youths were identified as residents of Dayagama, Chunakam and Chundapurmi, were aged between the ages of 20 and 23 years. With that, here's a look into other developments around the island in brief.
A prominent Sri Lankan economist, Amal Sandaratna, the founder and CEO of Frontier Research, passed away after falling from the 7th floor of an apartment complex last evening. Preliminary details of the investigations revealed that Sandaratna had jumped out of the apartment suddenly while having guests at his home. However, it was also noted that the 47-year-old victim had been under treatment for depression for the last few years. Meanwhile, a woman died on instance after being attacked by a wild elephant that entered the village in Horopathana this morning. The villagers insisted that this is another episode that supplements their plea for a proper solution for the issue of wild elephants, although the respective authorities were already informed in this regard. The police special task force has apprehended a suspect along with a CZ-type foreign-made pistol, 3 magazines and 37 9mm type bullets. The 40-year-old suspect was arrested following a raid carried out by the officers of the Thangalla STF camp based off a tip that was received. The suspect was produced to the Okawela police station for further investigations.
Tourist arrivals to Sri Lanka surge in July, more than double year on year in just the first 20 days of the month. More on this after a short commercial break.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්. අපේ ගෙදරත් ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් තමයි. මාදිලි රසකින් යුත් මෙට්ටලුවේ ප්‍රමුඛයා. ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් සැපනින්දට සැප මෙට්ට.
Welcome back. President Ranil Wickremesinghe a short while ago extended an invitation to the leaders of all political parties and independent groups with representation in Parliament for an all-party conference. The conference aims to inform and update all members of each party about the progress of the National Reconciliation Programme. The invitation comes in the wake of the meeting the President completed last week with members of the Tamil political parties, where he underscored that the full enactment of the 13th Amendment can only be achieved if all party leaders in Parliament agree to a comprehensive devolution of powers. This also follows an initial invitation initiated by President Wickremesinghe in January of this year. On inquiry by AdaDerana, SJB MP Rajat Mandara confirmed that the invitation is currently under consideration by the opposition. Tourist arrivals to Sri Lanka have almost doubled so far this year compared to statistics from a year ago. During the first 20 days of this month, 89,724 travellers were received in Sri Lanka. During the same month of last year, only 47,293 tourists visited the island. Meanwhile, in June this year, Sri Lanka recorded above 100,000 tourists. With the latest Sri Lankan Tourism Development Authority statistics, the cumulative figure for the year stands at 714,598 visitors to the country. Sri Lanka's tourism industry continues to show a positive growth trend, as last year's total numbers of tourist arrivals stood at 719,978, while this year's number of visitors have already reached 714,598. According to the SLTDA, a majority of tourists had arrived from India, numbering 15,330, while arrivals from the United Kingdom and China recorded 10,184 and 5,963 arrivals respectively. President Ranil Wickremesinghe today announced that the government will be unveiling the country's new tourism plan, Visit Sri Lanka, in the coming months. The President also revealed that the government is preparing to launch a culinary school in collaboration with the private sector, the travel industry and the hotel industry, noting that there is a need to train more personnel in the hospitality field, particularly in culinary tourism.
The National Award Ceremony and Competition of the Bocuse d'Or 2023 was held in Colombo yesterday under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Referred to as the culinary equivalent of the Olympics, Bocuse d'Or is a highly sought-after culinary competition staged nationally, regionally and finally internationally. Sri Lanka hosted the Culinary Championship yesterday, where 28 teams participated in the intense cook-off to determine the winning team which would represent Sri Lanka at the regional competition for the Asia-Pacific region next year. Thereafter, winners from each region representing their countries would get the coveted opportunity to attend the global competition in Lyon, France in 2025.
There's a void in our room. We all feel it. These functions would not have been possible without Merrill. And we meet here today for the first time without him. Our tourist industry, our hotels would not have been the same without him. One that is non-debt incurring is tourism. You can earn this money. So the question is, how much can we earn from tourism? From that which dropped last year, what it will be this December and next year. And we want to go ahead. Then 2.5 million tourists are not enough. We are now aiming for 5 million, of which 2.5 should be high-end tourists. Indian estimates are that Sri Lanka can take up to 10 million tourists, most of them from Asia and the Indian Ocean region. So there will be a change, but we have to ensure that we go upmarket. Now, if you look at 5 million tourists or 10 million tourists, there has to be different types of tourism. And one that we can do well is culinary tourism. And that's what we should focus on. Nevertheless, we should go in for food. And if you're having culinary tourism, remember, bulk are going to come from Asia. So there has to be fusion. Food from different parts of Asia, not only Europe. That's what we should focus on. Therefore, I think we must now train more and more personnel in the hospitality field, especially that culinary tourism. So let's get ready for it. I've been talking with some of my planners and others, and we feel, firstly, we have got to upgrade our hotel school, and it must become a genuine hotel school. But more than that, together with the private sector, the travel industry, the hotel industry, government is prepared to start a culinary school, just for that, for large number. We'll be announcing a new tourism plan. It's called Visit Sri Lanka, which will most probably be released in August or September. We are giving the final touches, but we are ready to go along.
The Colombo bourse closed in negative territory for the first time since 15 straight winning sessions as a result of price losses in Lanka IOC, CIC Holdings and Haley's. The benchmark all-share price index fell 0.11% to end at 11,093.92 points, while the more liquid S&P SL20 was down 0.42% to settle at 3,218.32 points. The market-generated turnover crossed 2.6 billion rupees, with the majority of the revenue coming in from the banking sector. The fall was arrested by gains in the banking, diversified and food sectors. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 126.5 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 126.6 million rupees. With that, let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Sri Lanka issued a new order relaxing certain limitations imposed on outward remittances. The new order, issued under the Section 22 of the Foreign Exchange Act No. 12 of 2017, has relaxed certain limitations on outward remittances for capital transactions and removed the restrictions on current transfers of emigrants. However, other suspensions imposed under the previous order will continue. The new order is effective for 6 months from June 28th. Accordingly, the first-time claim of migration allowances has been increased to $50,000 from the previous $30,000, and subsequent claims after the initial claim of migration allowance was increased to $20,000. Outward remittances on capital transactions via business foreign currency account has been increased to a maximum limit of $100,000 for the purpose of expanding their core business overseas. Limitations and suspensions imposed on repatriation of current income or accumulated current income of emigrants and outward remittances by companies incorporated in Sri Lanka, being subsidiaries or branch offices of overseas companies, to make investments in employee share ownership plan or employee share option schemes have been removed. The Department of Foreign Exchange said that the new order was issued considering the current and expected developments in the domestic foreign exchange market and with a view to further facilitate international transactions. The decision has been taken with the recommendation and the approval of the Monetary Board of the Central Bank and the Cabinet of Ministers. Entrepreneur Dilip Jaivira emphasized that the excessive deliberations on the environmental crisis should be relevant to local culture rather than concerning the scientific impact of the crisis. Meanwhile, speaking at the launch of the Sinhala translation of the volume Buddhist Perspective on the Eco-Crisis, Induragage Dharmaratna Thero added that Dilip Jaivira should be offered the gratitude of the entire nation for publishing a book with much importance.
The launching of the Sinhala translation of the volume Buddhist Perspective on the Eco-Crisis by entrepreneur Dilip Jaivira was held yesterday under the patronage of the Induragare Dhammaratana Thero.
Buddhist Perspective on the Eco-Crisis කියලා මේ පොත සිංහලයට පරිවර්තනය කරලා අපිට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ නීතිඥ දිලිත් ජයවීර මැතිතුමා. අපේ සමස්ත ජාතියේම කෘතවේදීත්වය ඔබතුමාට මේ වෙලාවේ පුද කර යුතුව තියෙනවා. ඒ තරමටම මේ පොත වැදගත් එක පිටුවක්වත් නැහැ අතාරින්න පුළුවන් පිටුවක්. මේකේ මගේ සිත්ගත් කාරණාව පාරිසරික අර්බුදය අතර නොබැඳි ප්‍රේමය. අපිට ස්පර්ශ කළ නොහැකි තැනක තිබිච්ච ඥාන සම්පත්තියක් අපිට ස්පර්ශ කරන්න පුළුවන් තැනකට පාත් කරලා ගෙනත් තියෙන්නේ දිලිත් ජයවීර මැතිතුමා.
මේ පාරිසරික අර්බුදයේ බොදු ඇසින් කියන ග්‍රන්ථය යමෙක් කිව යුත්තේ පරිසරය ගැන තියෙන අර්බුදේ වටහා ගන්න නෙමෙයි. ඒ එකක් පමණයි. බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේගේ දර්ශනය තුල එන මේ ධර්ම කරුණු කොතරම් දුරට විශ්වීයද, කොතරම් දුරට සාර්වභෞමිකද, සාර්වත්‍රිකද කියන කාරණය වටහා ගන්න. මේ පහුගිය දවස්වල ඇති වුණු පාරිසරික සංවාදය දිගින් දිගටම කරගෙන ගිය අපේ හාමුදුරනේ බටහිර දෘෂ්ටි කෝණයෙන්. එය විද්‍යාත්මකදයි සොයන්න සාකච්ඡා කළා මිසක් එයා අපේ සભ્યත්වය තුළ අපේ මේ ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨ සිංහල බෞද්ධ ශිෂ්ටාචාරය තුළ කොතරම් දුරට මේ දේවල් අනුගත දෙයක් නැහැ කිසිම සාකච්ඡාවක් තිබුණේ නැහැ.
And that wraps up all the news I have for you this evening. Do join us again tomorrow for a roundup of the latest news at the same time right here on First at 9. For now, I'm Jonathan Benedict wishing you a good night and a blessed Tuesday ahead.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.